Anyone remember the pandemic? A few people. Feels like an odd kind of long time ago already, doesn't it? Such a long, drawn-out low point in our lives that had within it its own lower points. Basements upon basements, we kept discovering trapdoors that just led to more shit beneath the shit, each new level releasing its own signature stink. Remember? I remember parks wrapped in caution tape. And rows of nail polish and greeting cards and stuffies cordoned off at Pharmaprix as non-essential. But don't worry, this isn't really a story about the pandemic, but please do clock that shit show backdrop before we move forward. It's actually a story about my youngest son and something that happened with his hair. He was in kindergarten at the time, and he'd been wearing his hair quite long for a while. And I guess at some point, he got a knot in the hair at the back of his head. And I say I guess, and at some point, because really, by the time I truly noticed it, it had already matured, morphed, mutated into a voluminous, puffy cloud of chaos that was standing up at the back of his head. It was as if hundreds, nay thousands, of individual strands of hair had been quietly dancing an entanglement tango for years, and then unleashed an unbridled orgy of knots fornicating with other knots. And the resultingly monstrous, matted clusterfuck hell shape of hair was now standing up. Yes, literally standing up from the back of my son's head. It was bad. It was a problem. And a most unwelcome problem. 'Cause see, I didn't care much for problems at the time. I didn't have much patience for them, given, of course, the rolling dumpster fire that we were calling everyday life back then. You couldn't get a comb or a brush through this thing, that was for sure. I would pick up one of these implements with good intentions and zero strategy, as though by simply holding it in the direction of my son's head while making pained expressions, I was somehow at least doing something. And once he got wise to what you were up to, you couldn't get anywhere near the thing, or eventually even him, without being swiftly swatted away. Each night in the bath, we would drown the nasty nest in globs of specialty shampoo, which weren't so fucking special after all, because each morning I would send him off to school with the problematic puff having risen again. And all the while, the knot in my own stomach was growing. I was besieged by these gnawing feelings that this really isn't okay. It looks terrible, like really terrible. Do something, I would say to myself. I'm trying, I would say back. Are you? I would ask again. Kind of, I would vaguely insist. Well, it's not good enough, I know that already, and on. I honestly couldn't really believe that his father, my ex, and I were both just sending him off to school day after day from our respective homes, looking so obviously unkempt, as though nothing. It wasn't even hat weather, for God's sakes. I couldn't help but imagine how his kindergarten teacher and after-school workers and even his more aesthetically aware peers must have been so confused, if not disturbed, by this bizarre, ignored clump. I wondered what kind of mother it made me look like. Neglectful, oblivious, uncaring. And poor kid, he didn't deserve this shit. His parents get separated when he's 3, a global pandemic hits when he's 4, and now hairpocalypse at 5. Not fair. Because of his young age, he was exempt from having to wear a mask at school, but what, instead he gets saddled with this? Come on. That said, aside from my clumsy attempts at intervention, he never really seemed to mind much. He's a very beat of his own drum kind of kid that I've always found admirable and baffling. He's smart, he's observant, and he doesn't really give a shit what you think. It's cute. But just in case you're starting to suspect that I might be exaggerating, because I get it, parents sometimes do, the nest was so dramatic and enduring that my son actually incorporated it into the self-portrait he had to do for class that year. In this portrait, he's colored his hair a darker brown than it actually is, so it basically looks like there's a scrawly hamburger patty shape balancing itself on the top of his head. Now, Confabulation has a no props rule, which I totally respect, but for the record, my son had given me permission to bring in said portrait as Exhibit A in this pathetic tale. At night, we would sit on the couch watching TV, trying to relax, and I would always catch sight of the bouffant back of his head. It was always most taunting in profile, of course. And I would know, just know that the hairy web was winning. And worse, it was surely still growing, too. It was bigger than me, it was better than me. Mom guilt, as it tends to do so well, would pretzel itself into shame, waves of which would flow over me as I would try desperately to bring my gaze back to the TV. What started to interest me, though, was how the pangs of guilt and waves of shame started showing up with shoulder shrugs, too. I mean, nothing was working to get rid of this thing, and I just wasn't sure what else to do. And I was tired, like really tired. I certainly wasn't at peace with the nest, but I was definitely at a standstill with it. And the embarrassment I felt on one hand and apathy on the other started to become almost kind of fun. A little rock and roll, a little Mummy Unhinged, a little que sera. It certainly felt very pandemic. The day I finally took my son to the hairdresser, wisely passing the buck to a professional, brought relief and disbelief. Thank goodness we're doing something proactive and concrete, but what the fuck took us so long? The hairdresser took a few pained looks at the nest, poked at it a couple of times, as I fumblingly tried to articulate the strange COVID cocktail of denial and passivity that had been flowing through me. He examined it from different angles, as though touring the disaster site might give him a way in. And then he slowly shook his head, and I basked in the shared helplessness of this stranger. He was suddenly cast as a comrade in the absurd drama I'd felt so alone in. For a hot minute, he debated being able to do something other than just shave my son's head, but the nest had bested him too. A full buzzing was his only offering. Even then, I hemmed and hawed a bit. My son had never worn his hair that short, and in contrast to how long it had been, the difference would be striking, maybe even upsetting. But no, this was good, I assured myself. If not good, it was necessary. It was really the only option. So all the hair came off, what was knotted and what was not. And I watched as weeks of worry fell gently to the floor and were swiftly swept away. Later, though, as we were walking home from the hairdressers, I noticed that because my son was wearing an army camouflage sweatshirt that day and happened to have his face painted for some reason, with his head buzzed, he ultimately just looked like a different kind of crazy. There are a lot of areas of parenting that I kind of phone it in on. And not just the Instagram-y ones like birthday cupcakes or Halloween costumes, but like basic things. Toothbrushing supervision has historically been pretty non-existent in my house, kind of a don't see, don't know mindset. Reminders of hand washing, even after living through a pandemic, just never seemed top of mind. Wholesome cooking could not be called consistent. Treats are rarely deserved. Screen time is grossly underestimated. But if you're a parent, you know that there are just too many aspects of our children's lives for all of them to matter all the time. So a triage process has to happen. Not because some things matter and some things don't, but almost everything matters and there's just too fucking much of it. And I think sometimes the things that don't make the cut for your attention, the hills you'll just refuse to die on, can surprise you, like the nest did me. And the pandemic really seemed to highlight this truth, in some ways more helpfully than normal times ever could. And in that sense, the nest humbled me. It taught me that dialectical thinking can be our friend. That, oh my God, you can't go to school like that and have a good day, I love you, bye, can exist together. Not in harmony, just together. So I felt humbled by the nest, but grateful to it too. I still do. Grateful in the same weird way I've sometimes felt to hangovers or heat waves. Grateful for the reminder that in some moments you will take stock of what you have to offer and you will realize it is not enough. And the beauty of standing on hills you won't die on is that sometimes not enough will simply have to do. Thank you.